This is the BreadWinner Podcast, hosted by entrepreneur, influencer, and sales wolf, Tyler Harris, bringing you the insights from the most successful forward-thinking entrepreneurs and influencers, so that you can rise to the top and make more dough.
Now, let's get into the show.
All right, what's up, everybody? This is the BreadWinner Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Harris, and we have a very, what word am I looking for? Special.
Oh, yeah.
Guest in the house today. We are actually live recording the Sales Wolves podcast, as he is the co-host of that. But we got him on the BreadWinner Podcast on a Sales Wolves podcast. So it's
That's
like
a tongue twister.
What did you say? You always say a riddle mixed in a...
That's a riddle wrapped in an enigma.
Yeah.
Like that's a mystery wrapped in a riddle inside an enigma.
It is all that and more. And so
the shooter doesn't even know who killed Kennedy.
So we're going to jump right in. But we got Joseph Caldwell here, and a lot of you that have been following any of my content, you've heard me talk about these mentors that came into my life 3.5 years ago. Joseph was not one of them, but we're glad to have him here anyways, because he knows them. So it's like...
I knows of them. So I can talk about them.
No, but... in all reality, Joseph has been one of the biggest mentors and person that's been instrumental in this transformation that I've gone through over the past few years, and I'm extremely grateful for that. I'm not going to look him in the eye when I say it, but it's a podcast, so you didn't see it anyways.
You only heard him not look me in the eye, and you can only imagine I'm sitting here petting a skull.
So what we're going to do is we're going to give Joseph a couple of minutes just to introduce himself for those of you that have not gotten to meet him on the Sales Wolves podcast or on his social media yet. But Joseph, tell everybody who you are, what you do, where you're from, anything
Caldwell
specific.
From a very small town, Black Mountain, North Carolina, and CEO of Consolidated Assurance. We run the First Responder Task Force and across the country. That's how we met.
Yep.
But man, a little bit about myself. I'm nothing special. There's nothing special about me. You've already graced them with that. But that's what people don't understand is I have just realized where I wanted to go in life and what my purpose was, and surround myself with people like that are similar and wanting to go and do something special too. You know, a lot of times people in my position, they talk about they pulled themselves up by their bootstrap, and I'm never going to feed people that shit. I'm not a self-made man. I look around and almost every decision I make, I've learned how to make that through mentors in my life. And so that's why it's a special thing when you look down and not look me in the eye and call me a mentor. Don't spit that coffee or water you just drank. But anyway, that's a little bit. Married, 4 children, and I love my kids, love my wife. I have 3 daughters, 15. Well, she's turning 15, but right now I have 14, 13, 12, and a 10-year-old. My son's 10, and so those fill up a good portion of my life, which I love. But anyway, that's me.
Awesome, man. So we're just going to jump right into the first question. So you and I both love this statement of the fact that every successful person has a painful story, and then the part we always tap onto the end where your painful story have a successful ending. So give us one of those. You've told me a few here lately that I hadn't heard before, but give the listeners one painful story that happened for you, not to you, that's made you who you are today.
What did I tell you that you hadn't heard?
There was one recently that you were talking about. Oh, well, there was the one with Jeff talking last night or the other night at dinner about the lending the guy money and having to go up.
Oh,
that one.
Yeah. Let's not talk about that one.
There's dented can stories. There's
dented can. Oh man, yeah, freaking A. Yeah, so we had to, I mean, you know what? Everybody does what they have to do. Like, I see people that are in situations and they don't have money, and you do what you have to do, right? And so we could not, and by we, you know, like I like to include my wife we couldn't make it in those days, and then I like to just say I made it. No. But no, I couldn't cut it, man. I wasn't making the money, and I was working three different things. I won't call them careers or jobs, or I won't call them purpose-driven anything. I was just working three different things, and so the way that we fed our 4 kids was there was a sidewalk sale outside of a grocery store in this area where they would literally sell boxes of retired food. Expired food. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. See, I'm not that smart. The food was retired on a beach in the islands, but the food was expired, and some of it like 6 to 8 months to a year 2 years expired.
Yeah.
But man, it was $8 a box. All right, and they had these in rows, and probably 200 people that were poor as shit like me would show up at the same time, and you couldn't go until they blew a whistle. Did I tell you this part?
This was also filmed. It was a reality TV show.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, you couldn't go. And so what I would do is I'd get there early and I'd pace around the whole area and see where I could see stuff that I knew I could feed my kids, right?
Yeah.
And stuff that probably would, like cereal's not going to go bad. If I could get 15 boxes of this obscure cereal that nobody on God's green earth wanted, you know what I'm saying? Like that was a win. And the boxes were $8 a box, and so literally, my oldest can still remember because I'd take her. She was probably 5, 6 at the time. And Kim and me and our 5, 6, 7-year-old would get, and we would point out the one she had to get, and Kim and I would have our eyes on the one, and for real, like people would get a box and they would start putting, like, oh, let's take this out of this box, like they were shopping.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Dude, I karate chopped them old people in the throat, and I would grab a box, put it on top of another box, put it on top of another box, and I would tote 3 at a time over to our space. And so sometimes we'd put our kid guarding the space, right? Because people would try to come snatch shit out your box, and I'd go and knock some old lady out, that was probably on, fixed income and wasn't making it herself. But when you're in that situation, you can't really care about what other people are going through, because you only care what you can't focus on anyone else when you're not making it. When the wolves are at your door, you don't care about the guy down the street where the wolves are devouring him. Yeah. You can't. Yeah. You can't. Because in that fear and anxiety place, it shuts down all of your frontal lobe, and you act out of instinct. You got to make it. So literally, I would get probably 6 to 10, 12 boxes, and we would go back, and our kids thought it was Christmas every Saturday, man. We would line this stuff up and section it all out, and that's how we ate. I'm
envisioning your daughter, when everybody's standing in line waiting for this whistle, just kind of crawling around, tying everybody's shoelaces together. And blew the whistle, everybody's tripping over them.
I went back when I didn't have to go back. We still did it for several. Because it's hard to let go of those, right? Because you're in a scarcity mindset. It's hard to let go of that scarcity mindset. Yeah. So we would go back and I would still buy them. But when I would go and buy boxes this time, I'd be like, hey, pay for all these people's boxes too. Because I know I was a jerk in the beginning. I was like, look, I'm faster than you. I'm going to beat you to that box. Like people are like, oh, I've got that box there. And I'm like, yeah, you better be quick off the line, buddy. But awesome. But that's one of the many stories, that I could tell.
And so let's talk about that real quick and kind of unpack the responsibility aspect of that, because you explained that when you were in that situation, you couldn't even not only take responsibility for the people around you, but you couldn't even think about those around you because you were worried about taking responsibility for yourself at that point. Yep. And so now, fast forward, how many years? A lot of years, probably 8, 9, 10. So fast forward 10 years, where now you do have the ability to take care of, obviously, yourself, your family. What does that look like for you now, in that you are aware of things that are still going on around you, but now you're able to actually take that breath and look to your left and right and take care of those? Sure, man. It started probably, I've always been a giver. Like, people hear me talk about looking out for yourself and all that stuff, and they think I'm really selfish sometimes, because they just don't understand that
if you're not if you don't take care of yourself and you're not healthy, you don't have oxygen, you don't have food,
there's nothing to give.
Yeah, you can give them a big pile of you can give them a firm grip on an empty sack.
Exactly.
I mean, but so what it looks like now, man. We feed, because let me tell you, man, there's people on this earth that they got to make the decision between buying their medicine and buying food that month. Mm-hmm. They're on fixed incomes, a lot of older people there. And look, I could throw stones and say, well, you should have done this or you should have done that. Hell, I don't know. I may be there someday. Mm-hmm. So I hope there's a me that will take care of me someday. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? Like, that will look out for someone else. And so, but you can only do that out of the overflow in your life. And so we between feedings in Nicaragua, between building and wells and digging wells and the feedings, I don't want to say feeding station, but the food ministries in South Carolina, North Carolina, we do over 750,000 meals a year now. And we also, last year, we were integral in rescuing over 6,000 kids out of slavery. Mm-hmm. Which still exists. Which still exists on this earth. People don't understand. The numbers are somewhere around 100. There's 100,000 slaves in the United States. Oh, yeah. Like, all these people are arguing over all this stuff in the media, when this should be the highlight in every story, is how do we destroy that, right, and free people.
Atlanta's one of the biggest hubs.
Atlanta
not too far from us.
is the biggest hub, for sex trafficking, for little girls and little boys too. But rescued those. We do. We have some college ministry stuff, some prison stuff that we do, but all in all, man, it's absolutely fascinating to see now that we don't have to think about that stuff. Like, we just do it. We just do it. And it's not just something we throw money at. You're going with us this year. We're going to take off and we're going to go get our hands dirty. Because here's the thing. You can just throw money at something. That's one thing. Yeah. But if you take your time, because see, I make money work for me, but my time and the breath that I just took is the most valuable thing to me on this earth, because I know I'm one down until I die. Yeah. Right? And so where I spend my time is magnanimously valuable to me. And so we're going down to actually love on people. So I feel like, I don't get into a lot of spiritual stuff and religious stuff, but I feel like if you're operating in love and you're doing something out of the love in your heart for somebody, that you're actually operating at the highest frequency that you can operate, and success, things pull to you at that point. It says that God is love, right? And I believe that if we're operating in love, then we're operating in our God-like power. Yeah. Like, it's just a fact. Like, I'm rough around the edges and stuff, which you're probably more aware than most. But man, I truly believe that.
So, have you ever, I know you have, but how often do you think back? And 10 years is nothing to some. It's a long time if you're 12.
If you're 12, it's a long time.
But 10 years is very fast. And to think of going from being on the receiving end of these things, and then 10 years later being able to not only be financially and being stable in all areas of your life, but being able to then not just help a couple of families, but you're talking about hundreds of thousands of meals that you're now able to provide other people. How do you even process that? Do you think that it was because of going through that 10 years ago that made you more aware of, like, now that I have been blessed, I can be a blessing?
Everything you've been through creates who you are. Yeah. That's just it. And it can create who you are, or it can destroy and keep you where you were. But that's the choice of the individual. I could have gone through that and completely held on to that scarcity and lack mentality, and I would still be huddled in a rental somewhere, right? Yeah. And so it's the person's choice to make that decision. But yeah, man, that's and I look at it now, and when I say it now, the thing that I hear in the back of my head when I tell you 750,000 meals, it's not come pat me on the back. It's, you ain't done enough. You ain't done.
It's not enough. Man.
It's not enough. It's not enough. They're still hungry kids, right? They're still hungry kids. They're still hurting widows. They're still hurting people that need love, right? So it's not enough. There's always one more.
So what's one thing during that transition period over the last 10 years that you quit doing that enabled you to succeed, or enabled you and put you in a position to succeed? What's one thing that you just quit doing?
Quit beating myself up.
Okay.
I quit beating myself up, man. I quit looking in the mirror and hating who I was. Mm-hmm. And when I started appreciating me and loving me, everything, it's like the doors that I thought were locked weren't even there. It's like they weren't even there. It's the story seems, and you know from what I made to what I make, mm-hmm. and it's staggering.
Yeah.
But to me, it was all a byproduct of forgiveness, love, but it all started here. Mm-hmm. It all started inside me. It didn't start. I didn't look out and go, well, I forgive you, Dad, for beating the crap out of me. Mm-hmm. No, I have done all that stuff, but I forgave me first, right?
Mm-hmm. So what's one misconception now that people may have of you, the 10-year later you, that you would want to set straight? So people that meet you now, or that know you now, that don't know the backstory, what's a misconception that they could have about you that you'd like to set straight?
Man, I don't know.
Not knowing that backstory, not knowing all that you just went through.
Oh, yeah. Anytime you're successful, and anytime you can drive what you want, live where you want, do what you want, pay for what you want, travel how you want, anytime you can do that, people look at that and they see it through the eyes of their own pain, mm-hmm. right? So they see it through the eyes of their own, what I call crap-colored glasses. It's their emotional baggage. That's what they see it through. Yeah. So, I've put stuff on social media and people will be like, oh, that's easy for you to say. You're the CEO and this and oh, yeah, it's real hard to get in cold water. You're in $1 million house with a pool in the backyard. So it's comical to me, mm-hmm. right? It's comical, but they just don't know the story, so I don't hold it against them. Mm-hmm. Like when they first started doing it, I was like answering them and stuff, and then I just went, man, I hope that person starts liking themselves. Mm-hmm. They'll quit hating everybody around them when they start liking themselves.
Talk a little bit about, you've discussed lately within our organization about this idea of being all on and all off, and I know that's kind of a renewed focus that you have now. Yeah. In that, over this 10-year period, in order to change and in order to transform in the way that you have, it's taken an insane amount of work. Mm-hmm. And talk about now this renewed focus of what's that worth if the family piece isn't together, right. And if you don't have that time 100% off, and that where some people are stuck in the middle there.
Mm-hmm. So, two guys. Sean Whalen, which he's coaching me personally. Mm-hmm. I love that guy. You're familiar with him. Yeah. And Tom Shay. Mm-hmm. I actually just had coffee with Tom Shay, and we were talking about that very concept of being, because my thing is be on, be off, and I'm talking about work, be all the way on at work, but you could look at it a couple different ways. You could, that when you're on at work, you are sick focused. Mm-hmm. And then when you're on with your relationships, your spouse, kids, family, friends, when you're on there, you're sick focused there. Mm-hmm. Most people don't know how to focus. Yeah. And it was funny, I was talking with Tom this morning, he said that's because they don't know how to be off in between, the space in between. Mm-hmm. They need to be off so that they can then go boom and be on. Yeah. Because humans can't be on all the time. Yeah. Like you can't just go be on here, or you'll be dead there. Yeah, sure. And so it's, but it's a thing that most people, you and I see it all the time. Most people don't know how to work hard. Yeah. They don't even know what hard work is. Yeah. They bought some kind of story early on, so they're I was there from 9 to 4, and I gave it a good Jimmy go at it or something. You know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous. You're like, you did what? Like I don't comprehend that. You have a job, you finish it. Like finish it. Was that 30 minutes or did it take you 3 weeks of no sleep? I don't care. Yeah. But then you're off, and you're really good at being off, or what I like to say, being on with family, or on, and you gotta learn what makes you happy. I saw this thing about Will Smith the other day. It was so cool. He was talking about him and his spouse, Jada, right?
Yeah.
He said that they kept trying to make each other happy. That's impossible. You're responsible for your own happiness. Yeah. So when you show up in the relationship and you bring happiness, he goes, I retire. He goes, I'm absolutely done trying to make you happy. He goes, never again will I try to do that. I'm going to make me happy, and I'm going to bring happiness to you. And it was really fascinating, man. And now they're tight as tight can get. It was cool.
That's awesome. And so it seems like even as of like today, it's almost morphed into not just all on, all off. It's how you're all on, but it's how you're off between the ons to make sure that, because a lot of people, they just don't, you said focus, but they're not intentional.
Yeah.
Like when they're at work, they may be intentional, but at home, it's not an intentional time that's spent to where they're almost looking at it as a business, like a return on investment of the time that they're spending with the family. That's interesting.
Take it off. So your off may be different than my off, right? Yeah. I can pull into the garage, and I see, I listen to every kind of music known to man. But I can pull into, but I love Hamilton now. I've gone twice to New York and seen, and Kim, we have a ball. But I will flip on King George's song in Hamilton, where he's so freaking funny, and I might throw a dip in and sing that to the top of my lungs. That's my off. Like I get out of the truck and I'm like, I'm freaking happy. Like this is awesome. And so it may be that, or it may be for me not going straight home after I've been on crazy at work, but pulling up to a lake somewhere and just sitting there in the grass. Or for me, getting in cold water, exposing myself to extreme temperatures. That's my off.
Yeah.
That's my off. Like that centers me, and then I can go be on again. I go play basketball with my son and go enjoy the video games he likes, and go talk with my daughters about all the sundry stuff that preteens and teens talk about. And guess what my daughter asked me yesterday?
I'm scared to ask.
Will you take? This is the 13-year-old. She said, and it was about her and the 14-year-old that's turning 15. She said, Daddy, will you take us driving this Saturday? And I was like, come again? Oh, no.
That's scary.
And I was like, okay, I will. And then I was thinking, whose car am I going to let them drive?
I'll let you borrow the golf cart.
That's not a bad idea, actually.
Really.
Teach them to drive a golf cart first. That's a good idea. Can we do that?
Paint some lines in the backyard.
And stay between the lines. She goes, Daddy, please make it a parking lot where they don't have those pole thingies. I was like, the light post? She was like, yeah, I don't want any of those around.
That's awesome. Put it on the motorcycle.
Yeah, that's safe.
So last question. One day, long, hopefully long time from now, on your headstone, what do they call it? An epitaph? Is that what it's called? If it were to say someone randomly,
I threw my voice over there. Did you hear that? Did you hear
randomly
that?
Just answer that question.
I am good at that. I'm a ventriloquist in my off time, right? Really? There is no TJ.
Exactly.
He doesn't exist. I don't know how I throw my voice into him.
So
It'll
have one phrase on the headstone. It'll say, "Here lies Joseph Caldwell." Joseph A. Caldwell?
Andrew.
That's what I thought. He was...
Contrary to popular belief, it doesn't stand for asshole.
Making sure. So here lies Joseph Caldwell. He was blank. What's the blank?
All in?
All in?
All in. In every area, man. All in.
Did you know that was mine?
Was it?
Yeah.
I don't even like you that much.
That's literally, that's mine, yeah.
Was it really?
Yeah. Exactly.
All in, man. All in. I want anybody to read it and go, because I want to be able to read it. I want my spouse to stand there and go, Joseph Caldwell was all in with me. I want my kids to go, Joseph Caldwell, Daddy was all in with me. You know? Arden to sit there and look at yours and go, man, my dad was all in with me. Right?
Absolutely.
Business partners, I want you to stand there, although I'll be looking at yours way before you look at mine. But I would want you to stand there and go, he was all in.
Yeah.
He was all in.
So tell people where they can find you on social media.
The CEO of Change. We just changed the branding of that. So CEO of Change, man.
So what are the handles for that?
Yeah, what are the handles for that?
Is it still at
CEO of
Joseph
Change?
Okay.
And I guess they just switched it
at
over.
CEO of Change?
At everything.
Okay. Everything is at CEO. Did you just say it's at everything?
It's at everything.
But it's at CEO of Change on Facebook, Instagram. Awesome.
All right, so they changed the tags on Facebook too? Oh, perfect. Good.
Getting stuff
Except
done.
your website.
Website's
that?
still the Joseph Caldwell.
The Joseph Caldwell, yeah, it's the website.
Got
The
it.
Joseph Caldwell. .com.
Last question. Who is one person that you would want to hear on the BreadWinner Podcast?
God. Him too.
Who?
God.
Let's see what I can do.
See if you can pull that
Audio's
string.
not coming in right now.
Maybe TJ could
Yeah.
could summon him. One person I would love to hear on the BreadWinner Podcast, if it was possible. Leif Erikson.
Okay.
He's the Viking that discovered America. You need to study history
No
more.
idea who that is.
He missed Iceland and just kept rolling. Let's see, man. Oh, you know who I want to hear? And I'm 100% you hadn't had him. What's the guy that we heard talk down in...
Tom Ferry?
Tom Ferry. That's who I want to hear.
Good idea.
That guy is on it. Mm-hmm. He is on it, man.
Great idea.
I would love to hear Tom Ferry. He dropped more notes. I took more notes on that cat. Golly, I took a lot of notes.
Yeah, he's incredible. I think he said that, or he didn't say it because that would be weird for him to say, but someone said, I think, of the top 25 realtors.
I was of the top 50. He coaches 15.
Yeah, and I think all the top 5 or something.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. That's
realtors in the country.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
Anyway.
Tom, you have been called out.
Yes.
It's time to be on the podcast.
It's time to be on the BreadWinner Podcast.
So with that, guys, that is the BreadWinner Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Tyler Harris. Extremely grateful to have Joseph Caldwell here live in studio, also on the Sales Wolves podcast. So those of you that are hearing this on the BreadWinner Podcast, make sure you check out the Sales Wolves podcast. Just search Sales Wolves on iTunes. It's also a video version on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube, you can search Sales Wolves podcast and check us out on video if you want to see how handsome Joseph is in real life, not just his voice. But until next time, we will talk to you then.
Thank you for listening to the BreadWinner Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave a rating on iTunes for a chance to be on the show. Send a screenshot of your iTunes rating to @TylerHarris page on Instagram, where he'll pick one person every single week. See you next time on the BreadWinner Podcast.